What's happening, everybody? It is Tuesday night. It is 10 o'clock Central Time. We've got a UFC card coming up this Saturday, and it's a doozy, man. It's a pay-per-view. It's going to be headlined by the rematch for the middleweight championship of the UFC. It's going to be Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. Fantastic card, fantastic main card. We got 13 fights to break down from a statistical and tape study perspective tonight. I'm Just the Tip with me, your host, Uncle Weezy. Welcome each and every one of you that's watching live and each and every one of you that watches the replay after this is already recorded. We are here to make money gambling on the UFC. We are here to stack cash tickets like flapjacks, betting on these fights, analyzing these fights, finding ways to beat these bookies when they misprice the line. So welcome to each and every one of you. I'm really looking forward to breaking down this card with you guys, with the chat. The address to the Patreon is scrolling on the bottom of the screen right now. I'd appreciate if any of you checked that out. Right now, for $5 a month, you get the basic stats package. For $20 a month, you get the prop template. The price of the basic stats package will be going up from $5 to $10 next month. Because of all the work that I've had to put in rebuilding this database, we've brought in new statistics. We've got those distance striking numbers, which are so important and so much more predictive than just the significant strike numbers, because we can tell when somebody's able to win minutes using those numbers that are just stripped out from the ground strikes, from the clinch strikes. We take those out, just consider those distance striking numbers, and it's very helpful. I know that it's helped me make some better decisions in terms of when I'm looking at fights that are largely going to take place on the feet. How's everybody doing tonight? It's been a week off here. We've had some time off. We came off a card 2 weeks ago. A small up week for me 2 weeks ago, up 0.77 units. Won a couple of units on the Victor Altamirano money line. Lost 1 unit on the Andrea Lee money line. That decision just didn't go our way. And I lost a quarter unit on Daniel Pineda round 1. He wound up getting the job done in round 2. But yeah, wound up being a small winning night and looking to continue that winning streak right now, which is a very small one, and build it throughout this next 7 weeks, because we've got 7 straight weeks of UFC action coming our way here. So we want to start it off on a good night, on a good note with this pay-per-view UFC 287. And so like I say, we're coming off a winning week here. And then I've also got one more thing I want to talk to you guys about here real quick. I want to dedicate this show today to the memory of my girlfriend's mother, Lisa. Lisa just passed away Monday night of last week after a very long battle with Alzheimer's disease. She was pretty much all the way gone. She went peacefully. It was a very difficult ordeal for the family to go through what Alzheimer's takes a family through. It's an absolutely brutal brain disease. And, you know, the person that is suffering through that disease goes through things, and the people that love them go through things that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. We just lost Lisa, like I said, a week ago. She was a vibrant woman. She was a fantastic lady. But you know what Alzheimer's disease did to her left her unrecognizable from the person that I met when I first met my girlfriend 16 years ago. I wanted to share a story with you guys to honor the memory of Lisa. Lisa was born in France, and she wound up moving to the United Kingdom when she was in her late teens. Wound up living in a hippie commune on a squat in London. And she would go to all the great shows back in the day. She once told us that her and her friends booed Elton John off the stage of a very small club in South London because they didn't like his music. And they were so mean to him that he actually stopped playing, called them mean, and cut his set short and wound up walking off the stage. She didn't like Elton John, but you know who she did love was Led Zeppelin. And she saw Led Zeppelin many times over their career. But one of the first times that she ever saw them was when they were brand new as a band. And they were playing in a very small club in London. And evidently it was very hot that night. And, you know, Lisa would tell us that, you know, things were hot, and she wouldn't just come out and admit that she was probably tripping on acid or on mushrooms or had smoked a bunch of weed or had done some drugs. But the way that she told this story, she was at a Led Zeppelin show, small club, super hot in there, and she's all the way up front on the stage. Now, their plan, it keeps getting hotter and hotter. The show keeps getting better and better. But Lisa was a small woman, and she wound up passing out near the end of the show. And because it was such a small club, and because there wasn't really much of a stage, she said it was maybe 6 to 8 inches difference from where the people were standing and from where the bandstand was. So when she passed out, when she fell down, she fell on the stage right during one of Jimmy Page's glorious guitar solos, right? So Page is soloing. He's really into it. And Lisa passes out on the stage, right in front of Robert Plant. And Plant turns around to the band and he says, "Stop, stop." And he attends to Lisa. So the music stops. They pick her up. They kind of get her some air. They get her back on her feet. And she shortly feels, she feels better. But obviously the thought, I like to picture Lisa waking up from being passed out with Robert Plant's face over her, a man that she loved dearly, I'll have you know, with that beautiful long hair of his hanging down over her face, saying, "Are you all right, love? Are you all right?" Right? So she was absolutely just over the moon because Plant stopped the show to attend to her. Now she's reading the paper the next day after the show, and reading the review of the Led Zeppelin concert the night before. And they had interviewed Jimmy Page. And Jimmy Page said, yeah, it would have been a great show. I was having one of my greatest moments ever as a guitar player, playing a solo, and I was interrupted by some dumb tart passing out on stage, which wound up ruining my solo, ruining the show, and pissing me off beyond all recognition. And that woman who passed out on stage and pissed off Jimmy Page beyond all recognition was my girlfriend's mother, Lisa. May she rest in peace. Appreciate all 30 of you guys that are hanging out in here with us today. Let's see who is in here in the chat with us. We got my guy DJ in the room saying, "Oi, let's stack them high and make the bookies cry this week, Unc. I appreciate you, and ring a ding ding, you guys." DJ with the $5 donation saying, "Appreciate all the hard work you put in, man. It makes it worthwhile when you guys show up, when you hit the thumbs up, when you hit the subscribe button, when you join the Patreon, when you contribute to the show. It makes it all the worthwhile. This is a lot of hard work doing these shows. It's a lot of hard work getting the stats ready every week for you guys, but it is a labor of love, and I appreciate you guys for giving me your attention and watching the show." And that's me saying and ringing ding ding there, man. And we got DJ saying, "Raises a big Paloma toast. I got a beverage here for you." DJ, appreciate you, brother. JSJ23 in the house saying, "Oi, what's up, Unc? This card is stacked with live dogs. Which of them is getting disrespected the most this week?" Yeah, there are quite a few of them, man. One that I'm on is Christian Rodriguez. I think he's being disrespected big time here. I think people are really sleeping on his grappling, and I think that people don't realize how much better of a striker he is than Raul Rosas Jr. Also, I think the line on the Gilbert Burns Masvidal fight is just kind of flat out gotten out of hand here. Minus 500 for Gilbert Burns. I mean, Masvidal has been fighting the toughest guys in the division for a while now. I think that's more based on narrative. I think people think that Jorge's got like a foot out the door. I think they think he's slipping in his old age with that dumbass shit that he pulled with Colby, jumping him outside of a restaurant in Miami. What the hell was he doing, dude? That was just stupid. And then now he's got a couple of, he's got the Masvidal Game Bred Boxing. He's got the Icon FC. He's a businessman now. So I think a lot of people are thinking that, he's basically done and he's just kind of showing up for a paycheck. But if he shows up ready to fight, I think he's going to look a lot better than plus 375. And then obviously, I mean, Chase Sherman, you guys, getting him at plus 350 over a bum like Karl Williams. Everybody knows Chase Sherman's going to clown on this hoe. He's going to destroy him, get him out of there in the first 2 minutes. So, yeah, Chase Sherman at plus 350. Give me some of that. Sorry. All right. Victor De Jesus, my guy, is in the room saying, oh, yes. What's up, Weezy in chat? Let's stack those tickets high this weekend. Victor, good to see you, brother. Good to have you here in the room with us. My guy, Alan Hayes, is in the room saying, what's up, Weezy? Appreciate you, Alan. Thanks for supporting the show, my man. We got Daz Files in the room saying, oi, oi, best main event. Such a good one, man. Such a good one. Any action sportscast? I hope that might be my guy, Effie, there saying, yup, here we go, man. Here we go, my guy Lou Betya in the room saying, oi, time for gluten-free flapjacks. Let's get it, man. Dirty River Fish saying a bunch of degens all in one place. You got it. You can't be snerious is in the room saying party time. We got Ice Viking saying, I'm betting every dog Bootsy barks for. Let's see who he likes this week. He's been barking for Michelle Waterson-Gomez all week. We'll see if he picks that up again on tonight's show, you guys. We got Daz Files in the room. Be interesting. Bet 10 every dog on card. Let's get it, man. We got Kevin in the room saying, oi, say hello to my little friend. Let's get it, man. My guy Tony Montana said that once, and like he basically killed like 10 people with that badass gun that he had. We got Kevin, my guy DFS by the numbers in the room saying, oi! And we got Bob Spikerman saying, my man, Uncle Weezy, appreciate you, man. We got Test Canal saying, Bob Spikerman and Weezy in the house. You got it, dude. We got You Can't Be Snerious saying cash money. We got my guy Devin. Ring a ding ding. Appreciate the $10 donation, Devin. Thank you so much for keeping the lights on here in your Uncle Weezy. All these donations are so much appreciated, you guys. Joining the Patreon is so much appreciated. So I really appreciate that, Kevin or Devin. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let's have a great show tonight. We got the Black Militant in the room saying this card kind of tough to build on DK. I haven't looked at DraftKings just yet. I'm going to be doing all that content tomorrow on Pub Sports Radio. So, yeah, I'll be diving deep into these DraftKings salaries and trying to craft some lineups, man. We got Alan Hayes saying Andrea Lee whooped her ass. These Texas judges smoking crack. Yeah, I mean, I heard. I didn't get to see the fight because we were up in Michigan with my girlfriend's mother pretty much at the end of her life. A couple days before she passed was when this last card happened. So I didn't even get to see the card, but I mean, everybody told me. My guy DFS by the number was like, dude, she won all 3 rounds. So yeah, that one's, I got screwed on that one, but it's not the first time. And it won't be the last either that these judges screw us over. We got DJ saying thumbs up the stream, help Weezy shave the algorithm's ass. Let's get it, man. Any action saying much love, man. Appreciate you. We got You Can't Be Serious. Well said. Rest in peace. Yeah, man. Rest in peace, Lisa. I'm sorry, Weezy, for your loss. Prayers up. Appreciate you, Alan. Sorry for your family's loss, brother. I appreciate you, Victor. We got thoughts and prayers to you and the missus, my friend. Appreciate you, Lou. Rest in peace. Says Ice Viking. You can't be snerious with the prayers. Jared Curry saying Alzheimer's is an incredibly hard thing to deal with. Sending some love you and your family's way. I appreciate you, Jared. Crazy how Elton John never recovered from that harassment. I think that's when he started dressing all weird. Yeah, I think that's when it happened with like the big glasses and shit. Lisa could be absolutely merciless when booing bands off the stage. And we got laughing at Lou Betcha, of course. We got Jared Curry saying legend has it he went by Eton John before that colossal. Love it. Lauren loves it too, man. Love this story. We got Bilal, the Bomb, Muhammad. Good evening, Weezy. What's up, Bilal Muhammad? And you're not the Bomb, though, man. Bilal is Remember the Name, Muhammad. By the way, Chicago, stand up. Valley Flow striking, stand up. Your guy Bilal Muhammad probably going to be next in line for that title shot. Kevin saying, sorry for your loss. Sounds like she was a hell of a woman. She was, man. She really was. We got beautiful story. Unk says, Juan Chavez, appreciate you. Juan saying, fly high, Lisa. Let's go, man. Ruthless Soda Pop saying Christian Rodriguez will win. You're very smart, Uncle Weezy. Round 1 guillotine for Rodriguez. Man, that guillotine Rodriguez had JSP in. I cannot believe JSP survived that. That was wild. We got the Dutch 4141 saying, yeah, Weezy Masvidal really doesn't have a path to victory, though. Well, I mean, if he keeps it on the feet and wins the minutes or lands a big shot in 2 out of the 3 rounds, there's a path to victory. But, I mean, I get it. Like, I don't have a bet on Masvidal, but, I mean, isn't plus 375 just a little bit nuts? A little bit nuts? I think it is. You know, I thought that it would be just much closer of a line. Like Burns minus 200, minus 250 maybe makes sense with the narrative issues and with the fact that Burns has just been hotter lately. But we can't we can't forget last 3 fights for Masvidal are against the 2 best in the world, in Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, in my opinion. So yeah, man, it's a tough one. We'll see what happens, but Burns, I don't think is going to look minus 500. It's hard to look minus 500 against really good fighters. Oi, says Jared Curdy, on a scale of CM Punk to Ronderos, how much of the good stuff am I on for considering Sherman KO, KO2, KO3 bets? I think you're on a lot of the good stuff. I was joking a little bit about Chase. We'll have a little bit fun later on in the show when we talk about this fight, you guys. But I wouldn't do it, but I'm guilty. I believe I had 1/10 of a unit or maybe 0.05 units on Chase Sherman by 3rd round knockout over Alexander Romanov at plus 6,000. But that was the time that fight got canceled. So I didn't wind up making the bet again. So I wound up not losing anything because, I mean, obviously he got his ass shaved, but that was a different fight because the first time they were supposed to fight, I think it got canceled and then they remade the fight. So I wouldn't do it, Jared, but it's mixed martial arts. You never know. We got Subhuman Gaucho is in the room saying, Weezy, what's up, man? We got the Dutch 4141 saying, I do love Bootsy. Bootsy's my favorite Rottweiler. He's everybody's favorite Rottweiler. He's a great dog, man. We got Alan Hayes, ring-a-ding-ding with the $10 donation. Appreciate you, Alan. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I know you're also a member of the Patreon. Much love to you, brother. Thank you so much. We got Subhuman Gaucho saying, let's get this money, my brother. Let's get it. We got Andy saying, oi. We got Oxygen 3000 saying, if Pereira wins, who beats him for the title? If Izzy wins, who beats him for the title? I'm thinking Khamzat. Thoughts? Yeah, Khamzat's going to need to move up to 185. He's going to need to string together about 2 victories there to be considered for a title shot. I think Khamzat toys with both of those guys. His wrestling is just so good. And I think that somebody like with the ground game of Adesanya, somebody with the ground game of Pereira, Khamzat takes them down once and it's over. So yeah, I mean, I think Khamzat absolutely could get it. I think if Adesanya wins the rematch, we're probably going to see a 3rd fight is what my thinking is. And if Pereira wins the rematch, I think that unless they match him up with somebody once again that has no wrestling at all, like maybe Cannonier, that he will continue to win. But I think if he fights anybody that can wrestle, he's going to wind up losing that title. And Subhuman Gaucho saying, oi. And we got Adam Mack saying, join it for a few to show the love. Appreciate the content always. Killing it. Always tuning in after live. Appreciate you, Adam. Thanks for hanging out, man. Any action saying, Izzy just fell to minus 135 in Vegas on BetMGM. Let's see how far this goes. Yeah, man. You can't be serious saying we need to do a deep dive on Bootsy's record this year. And we got Subhuman saying, let's get this money. My favorite goat had triplets 2 days ago. This is a cash year. Let's go. Let's get it, man. And we got AFG Baller saying, Uncle Weezy, you think Izzy will be more cautious this fight or go for it even more this fight? I think he's probably going to go for it a little bit more. And I think he might try to wrestle some more, but we'll see, man. He was really close to winning that fight. They both had their moments. I think these guys are very well matched. Really like Pyfer decision only at minus 150. That's not a bad look. I think he's going to win the moments. And if he doesn't get a finish, I think he's going to do very well and probably win a decision. AFG Baller saying Masvidal can KO Burns. Burns is chinny, and if he keeps it standing, it'll be good for Jorge. I mean, Masvidal can knock out anybody. He's got serious power. Masvidal's only win condition is the Leon fight. My condolences, says Bob. I appreciate you, Bob. Personally, I think it's fair. I see Burns winning over 80% here, but I get it. Yeah, man. 3 units, Pyfer decision only. 1 unit, Pereira. That's it. Okay, good. Woo! There we go. We got Masvidal knockout decision plus 450. Yeah, that's fat, dude. We got live bet Thunder Buddies minus 1.5. We got Oi Weezy and everyone says 6-side worldwide. We got Adam Max and UFC and WWE being together now. The UFC's got to have the narrative win and throw Burns some money to dive. So we get the Leon versus Masvidal matchup. Now, they want the Leon versus Colby matchup. I really believe that. I think that would be a great one to run back, man. It'd be so good for the cameras. It'd be so good, such a good build-up. The Cuban Assassin saying, I made it, Weezy. Have you gone over my Crush Sam Hughes fight yet? No, not yet. We're going to get started with that one real quickly. I'm in the UFC. I'm a bit worried about Alex winning and jumping to 205. Feels like him moving up is an inevitability given how gigantic he is. Yeah, probably, man. Tommy Under's in the room. He's saying he's got a max bet this week. I'd love to know what that is. Alan Hayes saying Burns rolls him. Yeah, he probably does. I'm pretty sure John Anik thinks Burns is going to murk Jorge. He might, man. He might. But we got to murk these lines, you guys. We got a lot of work to do. So let me, oh, no, not that again. Here, you guys. I got to try to share my screen with you guys. And let's hit that. Okay. I'm having problems with my, let me see here. No, don't do that. I got to refresh this, guys. Let me see here. Sorry, I'm having problems with my StreamYard. Present. Okay. Entire screen. Bam. Bam. All right. And let's see if this is working now. Oh my God. Can you guys see my screen here? They've changed some things on StreamYard that are really pissing me off and really making it difficult for me to share my screen. And I don't know if you guys are seeing what I need you to see. You see the lock. Okay, so all right, that's good. So now, do you see the stats? And do you see my face? Because if you see the stats now, let me know. Because I don't know why this is happening, but they've completely messed with the way that these screens show. Stats have arrived. Can you see my face? Yes, stats have. All right, good. Let's get to work here, you guys. We are going to start with the first fight of the night, the curtain jerker. And it is Jacqueline Amorim facing off against Sam Hughes. Let me get the banner up for you guys here. And let's see. We got Jacqueline Amorim minus 235. Sam Page plus 200. The fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 135. So we've got, with Jacqueline Amorim, somebody making their UFC debut here. She's a fantastic young Brazilian prospect who is an IBJJF world and Pan American champion, who is now a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's training out of American Top Team and has an undefeated 6-0 pro record, with all 6 of those wins coming in the very first round. She's got 5 submissions and she's got 1 knockout. Jackie's entire pro career spans just over 10 minutes in those 6 pro fights. Her 5 submission wins have come via armbar twice, knee bar once, rear naked choke once, and arm triangle once. So she's got multiple ways to finish fights on the mat, and her extensive high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background makes her an absolute nightmare to deal with on the mat. And even though she does her best work in the grappling exchanges, she's actually flashed some power on the feet with a 10-second KO win over Megan Owen. Jackie is still only 27 years old. She's training at one of the best camps in the world, and she's going to be rounding out her overall MMA game. There's still some unanswered questions on Amorim, though. She's never been out of the first round, so there's no way to know if she can fight at the pace we've seen her fight at thus far for the full 3 rounds. The best opponent on Jackie's resume is definitely Loveth Young, who Jackie beat to win the LFA title. Outside of that fight, she hasn't fought a UFC level of competition thus far, so we do need to see how Jackie looks if she can't finish her opponent in the first, and whether her striking is good enough to last for prolonged stretches on the feet. Definitely a lot more to know about Jackie, but from what I've seen, of her so far, she's got a very bright future at the UFC level if she can continue to demonstrate the ability to get fights to the ground and work her submission game. And on the other side, we got Sam Paige Hughes here. She's 30 years old. She's a strawweight fighter training out of Fortis MMA. She's got a 2-4 record in the UFC with wins over Elise Reed and Estela Nunez, and she's got decision losses to Loma Lukbunmi, Luana Pinheiro, and Piera Rodriguez, and she's got a first-round retirement loss to Tisha Torres that came in her debut, which she took on short notice. Sam relies on pressure, conditioning, and durability to find her way into fights. She often loses the first round, but uses her conditioning and pressure to wear down her opponents and take over fights late. She's definitely done her best UFC work when she's the better wrestler and grappler, and can win minutes in those exchanges, but that isn't going to work against the IBJJF multiple-time world champion and runner-up with 5 first-round finishes. So Sam's going to have to try to keep this fight on the feet, stop Jackie's takedown attempts, wear on her with low leg kicks, combinations, clinch control. Sam is very good at winning minutes in the clinch. Sam has definitely faced a much better level of competition, and she's shown the gas tank to get better as the fight goes on, which could be very useful against a fighter like Amorim, who has never been out of the first round. So a live bet on Sam Paige after the first round could be an interesting way to play her in this spot. But it's a tough row to hoe for Sam Paige here. But with the right game plan and execution in the cage, she can find a path to victory if she can find a way to weather that early storm against Jacqueline. But in summary, Jacqueline is 3 years younger, and she's got a 3.5-inch reach advantage. She's got a 100% finish rate, and she's been dominant with her grappling, getting 5 first-round subs in 6 pro fights. Sam Paige is 2 inches taller than Jackie. She's got 6 more pro fights, and since Jackie's making her UFC debut, Sam Paige has 6 more fights at the UFC level and almost 80 more minutes in the UFC cage. On paper, she has the superior conditioning and distance striking, and Sam Paige has definitely faced a much better level of competition. I like Jackie to win this fight in the first round by submission. Sam Paige's 47% UFC takedown defense on 23 attempts against is a huge red flag against the grappler, the quality of Amorim. Sam has a great get-up game and has been controlled for less than 8% of her UFC cage time. So if she can find ways to get back up while not allowing Jackie to set up submission attempts, then this fight's going to get very interesting. But I do see Jackie getting the job done here. Amorim by first-round sub is the pick. And I also like the under 2.5 rounds, which is, I think, available at -110 right now on DraftKings because it covers both fighters' best inside the distance win conditions. And that's round 1 submission by Amorim. And then after round 1, if Amorim has an adrenaline dump, if the nerves get to her, if we find out that her conditioning really isn't there to push a 15-minute pace, we could see Sam Paige really wear on her in the second and early in the third and potentially get a finish. So either way, I think the under 2.5 is a good way to play this fight, but the pick is going to be Jacqueline Amorim in her UFC debut, winning this fight by first-round submission. And there we go. Okay. The next fight that we're going to talk about is Shayilan Nuerdanbieke at minus 184, coming off a dominant victory over Derek Minner in a fight that definitely wasn't fixed. And he's going to be squaring off against Steve Garcia at plus 159. And the fight doesn't go to decision, juice to the tits at minus 200 here. So bring these stats up here on the screen. And let's talk first about the Wolverine, Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. Wolverine's a bricked-up Chinese wrestler who has a solid 3-1 UFC run thus far, and he's on a 3-fight winning streak with his only setback coming at the hands of the red-hot Josh Kulabau. This fight with Garcia marks Shah's 50th professional fight. He's got a 39-10 professional record, which he has amassed over a 7-year career, and he isn't even 29 years old yet. He's been insanely active on the Chinese regional scene, fighting 35 times in just over 5 years. On the feet, Shah throws with reckless abandon. He throws huge overhand rights, kicks to all targets, and he throws everything with 100% power, looking to either land big or fall into a takedown attempt when his opponent starts to also brawl with him. Even though Shah has a negative 2.98 distance striking differential per minute, and a pitiful 50.6% distance striking defense, he has landed 2 knockdowns in 4 UFC fights, so he can lose minutes on the feet but still be dangerous enough to land a big shot while standing. Shah does his best work thus far at the UFC level, winning minutes with his wrestling and grappling. He's got 2.93 takedowns per 15 minutes that he's averaging, 1.3 reverses per 15 minutes, and he's won 82% of the control time positions he has been in thus far, while out-controlling his opponents 46.8% to 10.2% in control time positions. So not only is he winning a ton of time with his wrestling and grappling, but he spends over 57% of his UFC cage time in control time positions. So he spends more time in the positions where he wins minutes than in the ones where he loses minutes. The wins haven't been impressive thus far with names like Sean Soriano, TJ Brown, and Derek Minner, who literally threw the fight. Garcia isn't exactly a top-name opponent, but he's definitely more dangerous than the guys Shah has beaten so far. And when we talk about the mean machine, Steve Garcia, he's a 30-year-old southpaw out of Jackson Wink who's a knockout artist. He's got a 13-5 pro record, all 10 of his inside-the-distance wins coming by way of knockout. He's bounced around several different weight classes between bantamweight and lightweight. Garcia was on Dana White Contender Series as a bantamweight, but he missed weight by 3.5 pounds, so he wasn't awarded a contract. He then made his UFC debut versus Luis Pena at lightweight and also fought Charlian Tavares and Meerschaert at 155 before moving down to 145 to shave the ass of Chase Hooper. When Steve Garcia's UFC fights are on the feet, it's been complete fucking chaos, you guys. Even though Garcia's UFC fights have only been at distance striking range for 3.43 minutes. I mean, you could see it on the screen here. 4 UFC fights that have totaled 24.6 minutes, but only 3.43 of those 24 minutes have been spent at distance striking range. And in that time, there have been a grand total of, wait for it, 7 knockdowns. Over 2 knockdowns per minute in Garcia's fights while they are at distance striking range. Garcia's got 3 knockdowns and he's absorbed 4. So if Garcia's fights are going to take place on the feet, it's almost assured that somebody's going to get violently slept. But this matchup could be different because we got Shayilan involved. At distance, in a very small sample size, Garcia lands 14.6 distance strikes per minute at distance, and he absorbs 7.88. He's got a 54% accuracy and a 62% distance striking defense, which are both solid. But when his opponents tend to land on him, Garcia gets dropped. as Meerschaert dropped him twice and finished him. And Ontiveros was credited with 2 knockdowns versus Garcia before Steve wound up taking Ontiveros down, and he wailed on him from top position. Garcia has shown 100% takedown defense thus far in the UFC on 5 attempts against, but that is deceptive because Garcia has been out-controlled 57.5% to 28.5% in control time positions. So only 14% of Garcia's almost 25 minutes in the UFC cage have taken place at distance striking range. Luis Pena controlled Garcia for over 14 minutes in their fight without once landing a takedown. So Garcia has given up way too much control time thus far in the UFC. And against a fighter like Nuerdanbieke, that's going to be something he needs to shore up fast, or he's going to get served on Saturday. So in summary, Shayilan is 2 years younger than Garcia. He's got 25 more professional fights and 150 more minutes in the pro cage. Shah is going to be the better wrestler, grappler, and control time minute winner in this spot. Garcia is the bigger, longer dude here, as he's got a 4-inch height and a 6-inch reach advantage. He has the more dangerous and technical stand-up, and he'll be the better striker in this spot and should be the better minute and moment winner while this fight is standing. Garcia is a strange paradox because he has 100% takedown defense on paper, but he's getting his ass shaved, losing minutes in the grappling exchanges. Outside of the Ontiveros fight, giving up 57.5% control time against. Both of these guys' UFC wins are trash. Shah's 3 UFC wins are over guys with a combined record in the UFC of 8 wins and 13 losses. And for Garcia, he's beaten guys that have a combined record of 3 wins and 6 losses. So it's hard to have a ton of faith in either guy, as neither has impressive wins, and both have different areas of the fight where they will excel. Garcia will be 4 inches taller, and he'll have a 6-inch reach advantage. So I really love him to have success standing here. So if he fights smart, I think he has an excellent chance to pull off the upset. And Steve could even threaten with submissions while this fight is on the ground. And Shah has been subbed 6 times in his pro career. I do see there being a solid possibility that Shah wrestles his ass off and cruises to victory here, but Steve is way more dangerous. So I'll pick him to pull off the upset. I'm going to pick Steve Garcia by 2nd round knockout in this spot. Not a lot of confidence in that pick, you guys, but I think that this is really more of a decision on my part that, neither one of these guys should be more than a minus 200 favorite. Neither one of them is that good. Frankly, we've seen Garcia, do things in the UFC cage that would lead you to believe that Shayilan should be able to get a bunch of control time, get some takedowns here, win some minutes on the ground. And then when you look at Shah's striking, you'd be pretty confident that Garcia is probably going to land big shots on this dude and knock him out. So I think they both have a path to victory here. I think the line is a little bit silly, especially seeing as, the most recent win for Nuerdanbieke was a fixed fight, where his opponent literally threw the fight. So, this line is a little bit wide, and I think there's some good value here on the Mean Machine, Steve Garcia. And this guy is dangerous when the fight is on the feet. And we've even seen him have a couple of deep submission attempts that got really close to finishing, especially against Luis Pena. And a guy like Shayilan Nuerdanbieke, who's been finished by submission 6 times in his pro career, potentially, even though Steve Garcia has never had a submission win in his entire career, we could see the first on Saturday against this particular opponent. But yeah, I'm picking Steve Garcia, everybody, to win this one by 2nd round knockout. The next fight is going to be Ignacio Bahamondes, Santiago, Chile, stand up, a minus 340 favorite. And he is training out of Valley Flow Striking right here in Chicago, Illinois. And he's going to be squaring off against Trey Ogden, the Samurai Ghost, plus 280. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 135 here. Let's get these stats up on the screen. And there we go. So, we got Ignacio Bahamondes is a 25-year-old prospect out of Valley Flow Striking in Chicago, Illinois. He turned pro at the age of 18. He's got a 13-4 pro record with 10 wins coming inside the distance. 9 of those 10 finishes are by knockout, 1 by submission. He's a lifelong martial artist, growing up in a fighting family. His father was a champion kickboxer, and he owned a school for martial arts, so Ignacio has been a fighter for pretty much his entire life. He's got a fantastic frame for the lightweight division at 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. He's a switch stance fighter who's a very technically sound and busy kickboxer. On the feet, Ignacio mostly uses his meat and potatoes weapons. A nice, straight, and crisp 1-2 with no windup from both stances, rear leg and switch kicks to both legs, the body, and the head. He switches stances a lot, and in his over 35 minutes of cage time spent at distance striking range, Ignacio is throwing 19.7 distance strike attempts per minute, so he's very busy. His motto is the best defense is a good offense. So Ignacio does a great job of winning minutes at distance, throwing over 5 more distance strike attempts per minute than his opponents do, and he's got a positive 2.96 distance striking differential. So the constant stance switching, deluges of volume, feints, and variety of weapons is a serious problem for his opponents. Ignacio's fights have taken place at distance striking range over 84% of the time. So Ignacio's 93.75% takedown defense on 14 attempts against has done a great job of keeping fights where he is most comfortable at distance striking range. Bahamondes is out-controlling his opponents 10% to 5.5%, winning almost 65% of his control time positions, and he's shown a fantastic front choke series that he displayed against the pink-haired Rong Zhu, defending his takedown attempts twice with front chokes. The second time he did that resulted in the third-round finish, the first of Ignacio's career by submission. That is a really good sign, as we know his background is in kickboxing, but seeing him show great takedown defense with front chokes and getting his first submission win at the age of 25 and only his third UFC fight shows that this young man is rounding out his MMA skill set, and that's going to be bad news for the lightweight division as a whole because this kid is a very good kickboxer. Definitely love this kid's upside. You can't teach size. He's a lifelong fighter. He's displayed fantastic durability and heart in the Makdessi fight, and his submission game is starting to improve as well. And he's going to be squaring off against a veteran in Trey Ogden, 33-year-old cagey veteran of the sport on the regional scene with a 16-5 pro record. He used to train at Glory MMA, but he's now listed at Marathon MMA on Sherdog.com. He has 11 wins coming by way of submission, 0 knockouts, and he's got a 5-2 pro record in decisions. Not one of Trey's 21 professional fights has ended by knockout. Trey was supposed to fight Loco Torres on March 25th, but Loco had to pull out due to weight cutting issues. So Trey is now fighting Ignacio, and Ignacio was originally scheduled to fight Nick Mata. So Ignacio lost Mata as an opponent. Trey Ogden a couple of weeks ago lost Loco Torres as an opponent, so now they're matching them up against each other. Trey Ogden's a serviceable striker. He's decent on the feet. He throws straight punches, mixes up his targets well, throws a good amount of leg kicks. He definitely does his best work on the ground as he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he's finished 11 times with submissions. He's got 7 rear naked chokes, he's got 3 guillotines, and he's got 1 arm triangle. So this man is definitely a strangulation expert. Trey could easily be 2-0 in the UFC, as I thought he won the fight against Jordan Levitt. But either way, Trey definitely leans on his experience. He sticks to a well-thought-out game plan, and he's got a well-rounded skill set that can find different paths to victory in different fights. So this fight is going to be taking place at 160-pound catch weight. Ignacio is almost 8 years younger than Trey Ogden. He's 4 inches taller, and he's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. So you got to love Ignacio's measurables advantages in this fight. He's going to be the more dangerous, technical, and busier striker on the feet. He will mix up his weapons and manage distance well while throwing way more volume than Trey. Ignacio also has very good takedown defense, stopping 15 of the 16 attempts against him, and he's been controlled for less than 5.5% of his total UFC cage time, which spans over 40 minutes already at this point. He's fought a comparable level of competition to Ogden as well. Trey is slightly more experienced overall. He's got the better BJJ pedigree. I think Ignacio should make this look fairly easy unless Trey can find ways to get this fight to the ground and keep it there. The only place where I see Trey having any success is from top control, but I haven't seen him show spectacular wrestling in his previous fights. He's 2 of 13 on his takedowns thus far at the UFC level. So that is definitely not something that you look for when you're looking for a guy to go out there and win, 5 to 7 minutes of a 15-minute fight against a guy with 93% takedown defense. So let's see. I haven't seen him throw spectacular wrestling in his previous fights, and he's been submitted twice in his 5 losses, both by guillotine and both to Thomas Gifford. So I could see Ignacio winning a volume-based striking decision or also locking up a front choke of some variety if Trey winds up getting sloppy on his takedown entries. So I'm picking Ignacio Bahamondes to win this fight by 3rd round submission. Like I say, Trey Ogden's fights have never ended in a knockout ever. And that's in 21 professional fights. But Trey has been subbed twice. And I believe that Trey is probably not going to just willingly stand with Ignacio at distance striking range here when he's at a 3-inch reach disadvantage, a 4-inch height disadvantage, when he's slower than this kid, and when he's not nearly as good of a striker. So I think that he's going to have to wrestle here. And if he does that, and if he gets sloppy and Ignacio snatches up that neck, I think that's probably the most likely way that Ignacio gets the finish here. And that's what I'm picking, man. Picking Ignacio Bahamondes. Chile, stand up. I'm picking you to win by 3rd round submission over the Samurai Ghost, Trey Ogden. Next fight, the people's main event, Cynthia Calvillo versus Loopy Godinez. If you aren't fired up for this fight, time to just cash your chips in and end it all right now, because these two ladies are going to put on an absolute show for us. Let's see what we got here. All right. Did I get that? Effie's saying 2 weight cuts so closely gotta affect Ogden. Yeah, and Ogden was saying that when he found out that Torres didn't make weight, he ate a ton of food and bounced right back up to 170, 175. It's gonna affect him. But they are doing this at 160-pound catch weight, so it'll be a little bit easier of a weight cut. But yeah, man, that could not be good for him. Black Militant saying, which fights could I look at for inside the distance? I definitely think there's a couple of these fights, but Meerschaert Pyfer is definitely one that I think could finish inside the distance. I think that Holland versus Ponzinibbio is going to be an absolute war, and I could see Pereira Adesanya finishing inside the distance as well. No IQ versus no desire to be in there. I love low-level women's MMA. Yeah, so Calvillo plus 250, Loopy minus 300. Let's talk about this fight. So let's start talking about Cynthia Calvillo. She's a 35-year-old fighter who formerly trained out of Team Alpha Male, but now trains at Tiger Muay Thai. She has a 9-5-1 pro record, with 12 of those 15 pro fights taking place at the UFC level. So Cynthia has fought her entire pro career at about the highest level imaginable. 2 of Cynthia's regional scene fights were against Montana De La Rosa and Jillian Robertson. So there really hasn't ever been a point where Cynthia wasn't fighting top-level competition. Cynthia is as cold as ice right now, though. She's 1-5-1 in her last 7 UFC fights. Her last 5 fights have been at flyweight because Cynthia has always had problems making weight when she was fighting at strawweight. Now at the age of 36, she's attempting to move back down to 115 pounds to regain her lost form. Excuse me, guys. This is a massive red flag, and anyone thinking of betting on Calvillo should absolutely wait to see how she looks on the scale before thinking about betting her. Cynthia historically has done her best work on the ground. 3 of her 6 UFC wins are by way of submission, all of them by rear naked choke. Cynthia's distance striking numbers are nothing to write home about, but they aren't bad either. She's got a negative 0.19 distance striking differential, but she does have a 66% distance striking defense, which is solid. And she has never been knocked down in 12 UFC fights. Where Cynthia shines is with her grappling, though. She's got 19 UFC takedowns while only yielding 4. She's won 94% of the control time positions that she's been in thus far. So when she gets fights to the ground, she's able to win minutes there. That being said, only 22% of her total UFC cage time has been spent in control time positions, and that's where she does her best work. So Cynthia's inability to get the fight to the mat is what's really holding her back. Unfortunately for Calvillo fans, it seems that she's fallen in love with her hands, and that has gotten her busted up in her last 4 fights. All losses, 2 of them complete ass shavings at the hands of the very handsome Jessica Andrade, and another one at the hands of Andrea Lee, who just got her ass shaved by the judges. Will you be quiet? Pipe down. Stop talking to me. I'm live on the air. Excuse me. These animals. This is every day for me, folks. This is every day. You know, I mean, like, the camera shuts down, right? And you don't know what's going on in Uncle Weezy's house. It's a Rottweiler and a Tortie just constantly busting my balls, man. So yeah, I mean, oh my God. Now she's coming right here. You guys want to meet the cat? No? You're going to come here? Come here? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Say hello to YouTube. No? Now she's shy all of a sudden. So anyway, she lost. She got shaved by Jessica Andrade. She got shaved by Andrea Lee. Cynthia's fought a solid level of competition overall, but her wins aren't that impressive, as her 6 UFC wins are over fighters with a combined UFC record of 23 wins and 36 losses. Now, Loopy Godinez is a 29-year-old wrestle boxer fighting out of Canada by way of Aguascalientes, Mexico. She's got an 8-3 pro record and 11 pro fights, with 2 of those 8 wins coming inside the distance. She's got 1 knockout and 1 submission. She's got a 6-3 record in decisions. Loopy's shown serviceable boxing at the UFC level with a positive 0.5 distance striking differential and a 63% distance striking defense. About 43% of Loopy's 79 minutes in the UFC cage take place at distance striking range, and Loopy has never landed or absorbed a UFC knockdown. She's definitely a boxer and throws most, if not all, of her striking output with her hands. She very rarely kicks. Loopy does her best work when she out-wrestles her opponents. She's averaging 4.54 takedowns per 15 minutes, and she's gotten 24 of her 53 takedown attempts. That's 45%, and she's attempted 53 in only 6 fights, so she's been very busy, attempting almost 9 takedowns per fight. She's also shown 81% takedown defense and is winning 80% of the control time positions she's been in thus far in the UFC. She accrues 46% control time and allows 11%. So over 57% of her fights take place in control time positions where she's been dominant. Loopy hasn't fought the best level of competition overall at the UFC level, but her wins are over fighters with a combined UFC winning record of 8 wins and 7 losses. Loopy really dropped the ball in her last outing against Angela Hill as a minus 300 favorite, but Hill's a very experienced opponent with good striking and solid takedown defense. Godinez claimed she was sick all week before the fight, so maybe that affected her performance, and it affected her ability to push a wrestling-heavy game plan, which she did not do, and that's what everybody was expecting her to do, because we had just seen Angela Hill get dominated in the grappling exchanges by Virna Jandiroba. I think a lot of people expected Loopy, being a better wrestler than Virna, to be able to get that fight to the ground easily, but she just didn't wrestle. So Loopy does have a good base for MMA with her wrestling and solid boxing. So if she fights smart and focuses on game plans that play to her strengths, she should be able to stack quite a few wins in the strawweight weight class here. But in summary, Cynthia Calvillo is 2 inches taller. She's got a 3-inch reach advantage here. She's been the better finisher as a pro, and in the UFC, she's got the experience advantage with 6 more fights and over 70 more minutes in the UFC cage. She definitely seems to be the superior submission grappler, but her ability to wrestle and get fights to the ground has been lacking. Cynthia's fought the better, more experienced level of competition overall at the UFC level. Loopy's 6 years younger than Cynthia. She's her UFC distance striking metrics are slightly better than Cynthia's, but it's not very noticeable. Both ladies wrestle well, but Loopy is way busier, averaging 4.54 takedowns per 15 minutes to Cynthia's 1.88. Loopy is also has UFC wins over opponents with better records, but Cynthia has been beaten by the more experienced UFC competition. There's no chance in hell that I would take a dog shot on Cynthia until she weighed in and looked good. Making the cut back down to 115 at the age of 36 on a 4-fight losing streak is just a huge red flag, especially against a fighter like Loopy, who can push a high pace with her wrestling. That being said, if Cynthia does look good on the scales and her grappling is still on point, she can make things look close here. I'm picking Godinez to win this one by decision, but if Cynthia looks like trash on the scales or misses weight, I think an under 2.5 bet at around plus 250 could be a cheeky way to play this fight. But yeah, I'm going to pick Loopy Godinez to win this fight by decision. But yeah, definitely not laying minus 300 on her. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Cynthia missed weight by like 4 pounds and just looked completely uninterested in there, got her ass shaved by Godinez, and then retired after the fight. It's just been a really rough run for Cynthia, and to regain your confidence, in fighting while trying to make this nasty cut down to 115 that she had problems with in the past at her age of 36. It's just too many narrative things are standing in her way here, but definitely going to be paying a lot of attention to the weigh-ins in this spot because Cynthia Calvillo on the scales is going to be a piece of information that we really need in order to be able to handicap this fight properly. All right. So that brings us to the next fight here. We've got Karl Williams facing off against the Vanilla Gorilla, Sherman. Let's start talking about Karl Williams here first. Karl Williams, a minus 450 favorite. Sherman, the plus 350 underdog. The fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 140. So Karl, I was absolutely blown away by the tape on Karl Williams, so much so that I max bet him at minus 200 versus Lucas Bresky, and Karl got the job done, getting 8 of his 13 takedown attempts in that fight, amassing over 10 minutes of control time, and he even landed a knockdown in that fight. This dude's wrestling is incredible, and he has the cardio to push a wrestling-heavy pace for the full 15 minutes. He was a multi-sport athlete growing up in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He moved to the United States, found himself getting into a lot of fights due to his accent and being new, and the fights that he got into caught the attention of the school's wrestling coach, and the rest is history. Karl fought his entire pro career at 205 pounds until he took the Lawson fight on short notice to get the Dana White Contender Series opportunity. Jimmy Lawson was a Penn State wrestler who was around a minus 300 favorite when the line opened. He closed around minus 250. Williams was 3 for 3 on his takedowns, amassed 11 minutes of control time, and only absorbed 1 significant strike from Jimmy Lawson over the 15-minute fight. An absolute clean sheet against a stud wrestler on short notice, up a weight class. The rest of the film on this kid shows the same story we saw versus Lawson. Dominant wrestling that he commits to for the full 15. He never gets tired, and he out-wrestles wrestlers. Dude with wrestling backgrounds like Lawson and Black Santa, Miles Amos. In the Amos fight and Wright fights, he had at least 12 minutes of control time in both fights and absorbed nearly no damage. Versus Wright, he basically had a body lock on the poor kid for 14 of the 15 minutes. Karl Williams' only professional loss came against Jason Butcher in B2 Fighting Series, where Jason, who has a 100% career finish rate, caught him in a triangle. Jason Butcher has 8 wins by submission in his career, and 6 of them are by triangle. So Karl got caught there. But outside of that fight, this dude is absolutely mowing through dudes and dominating fights from pillar to post. Williams even showed off a snappy jab in the Marini fight. It looked like he had made huge strides in his stand-up game as well. Definitely very impressed with everything I saw from Karl Williams, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he fares against an experienced veteran in Chase the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman. Now, Chase Sherman is a top UFC heavyweight, you guys. He's got a rock-solid 4 wins and 10 loss record at the UFC level, but the wins coming over really big names. Guys like Rashad Coulter, Damian Grabowski, Hurricane Ike Villanueva, and the legendary Jared Vanderaa. So the wins, for Chase are clearly very good wins. And the following 10 fighters who either cheated or basically got gifted a judge's decision beat Chase Sherman. That's Justin Ledet, Walt Harris, the very handsome Shamil Abdur-Rahimov, Justin Willis, Augusto Sakai, Andrei Arlovsky, Paco Porter, Fat Collier, Alexander Romanov, and Waldo Cortez Acosta. Chase hits like a truck, you guys, and he has impenetrable takedown defense. It's pretty clear that now is the time for Chase Sherman to stop fucking around and go get that strap. Kid has all the tools. He just needs to know when to take the right tools out of the box to do the job. The question is not if, right? But when does Chase put together this 7 to 10 fight winning streak to get this long-awaited shot against that bum John Jones for the heavyweight strap? There is no time like the present, my friends. And even if Chase gets his ass shaved on Saturday, then I predict that the winning streak starts with his next fight when he's 4-11 in the UFC. Because at that point, I think that the hype will have faded enough that now Chase Sherman's future opponents will start taking him lightly. And then once they do that, that's when Chase is going to flip the switch and start shaving ass on the regular. One way or another, Chase Sherman's going to climb his way to the top of this trash heap that is the UFC heavyweight division. And your Uncle Weezy told you first. So Chase, in summary, is clearly better everywhere in this fight. He's better looking. He's got the better stand-up. He stacks more paper and he gets more hose than Karl Williams does. He's more experienced. He's fought the way tougher guys. Maybe Karl Williams gets a couple dozen takedowns and he pounds Chase's head through the canvas. Maybe that happens. But this is MMA and literally anything is possible. So we can't say that it's impossible given the amount of times that Chase's opponents have clearly cheated their way to victory against him, that we can't count out the fact that maybe Williams is allowed to grease his legs up illegally, or maybe he brings a foreign object into the cage that he'll use to give Chase Sherman the business while Jason Herzog is knocked out cold by a steel chair thrown by Karl Williams' manager. Maybe that happens and Karl Williams gets his hand raised here. Yeah, that's probably what happens. I'm going to pick Karl Williams via foreign object while Herzog is knocked out cold by a steel chair. Karl Williams via cheating, first round knockout is the pick. But after Karl Williams gets this first round knockout via ground and pound after cheating, then we're going to see Chase the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman with his 4-11 UFC record get on that winning streak that we know that he can get on, that's going to propel him to the top of this division, you guys. But for now, Karl Williams is going to cheat and he's going to get this victory. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got a real good one here, you guys. This is going to be Gerald Meerschaert, the KG veteran at plus 165, squaring off against Joe Bodybagz Pyfer at minus 190. The fight doesn't go to decision for this fight, which I neglected to put on the ticker, is minus 325. So yeah, minus 325 right now for the fight doesn't go to decision for Meerschaert versus Pyfer. So let's get those stats up on the screen. And let's get my notes up here. So We got Gerald Meerschaert. We're gonna start talking about him first. Meerschaert's one of the wiliest veterans that the UFC middleweight division has in its ranks. He's got a 35-15 pro record, over 300 minutes in the pro cage, a 10-7 UFC record, and a career finish rate in those 35 wins of 94.28%. That's finishing 33 of 35 professional wins. GM3 is a fantastic grappler with 27 submission wins to his credit. He's finished all 10 of his UFC wins, and he's been finished in 4 of his 7 UFC losses, 3 times by knockout, 1 time by submission. Gerald he's got serviceable stand-up. He's got a positive distance striking differential of 0.038 or 0.38, and he's landed 3 knockdowns in his 17 UFC fights. He's a southpaw, and he does his and his best weapon in the stand-up is the rear leg body kick that goes towards the liver of his orthodox opponents. GM3 spends about half his time in striking and about half his time grappling. He's winning 44% of the grappling positions he's been in, but he's very active once the fight gets to the ground. He averages 2.17 takedowns per 15 minutes, 1.73 submission attempts per 15 minutes. So he's very active trying to finish the fight once the fight is on the ground. And he gets almost 1 reverse per 15 minutes, 0.87. So once the fight's on the mat, Gerald is incredibly active and opportunistic with his submission game. He's shown 29% takedown defense, has Gerald Meerschaert, on 24 attempts against. So if you want to take him down, Gerald will happily oblige you, and he will work from bottom position to set up submission attempts and sweeps. Gerald's fought a really solid level of competition overall. His 17 opponents have a combined UFC record of 88 wins and 68 losses, but his wins do tend to come against guys with losing records. But GM3 has come through twice recently as a big underdog against Mahmoud Muradov and Bruno Silva. So you can never count out the KG veteran from Racine, Wisconsin, can you? And now he's going to be squaring off against a young buck here in Joe Bodybagz Pyfer. Joe is a 26-year-old prospect who trains with Sean Brady, Andre Petrosky, and the rest of the Renzo Gracie Philly crew. He's got 12 pro fights. He's got a 10-2 pro record with 9 of those 10 wins coming inside the distance. So Bodybagz is definitely a killer be killed fighter. Joe has got a ton of power in both hands, especially his right hand. When he lands, it just sounds different. It sounds kind of scary, actually. They call this dude Bodybagz for a reason, and that reason is everything he does is with the nastiest of intentions, whether it's with his stand-up or with his grappling, where he has 2 wins by submission, and we just saw him win convincingly over Eric Anders in Fury Pro Grappling. Joe's only 26 years old, and he's getting better. He has the kind of one-touch power that you just can't teach. He's now 3 fights removed from that gruesome injury he suffered on Dana White Contender Series versus Dustin Stoltzfus, and it looks like he's healthy and ready to go. This is a huge step up in competition, though, from Austin Trotman, Ozzy Diaz, and Alan Amadovsky, though. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Joe performs against an opportunistic finisher and veteran like Gerald Meerschaert. So in summary here, Gerald's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He's got way more experiences. He's got 38 more professional fights. He's got 240 more minutes in the pro cage and 11 more years as a professional. GM3 took his first pro fight when Joe Pyfer was 10 years old. GM3 also has 16 more fights at the UFC level. So he's been fighting top-notch competition at the UFC level for longer than Joe has been a pro. Gerald will be the more active wrestler and superior submission grappler, and he's obviously fought, beaten, and lost to the better, more experienced competition. Now, Bodybagz Pyfer is 9 years younger, and he's 1 inch taller than Gerald. He's got serious power in both hands and will be the far more dangerous striker while this fight is on the feet. I'm going to pick Joe Pyfer to get the KO here, say second round, but I don't feel safe laying the juice. Gerald comes through so often as a big underdog, and he always finds ways to finish fights when his opponents make mistakes, and Joe has been finished in both of his professional losses. I don't see this fight seeing the scorecards, but minus 325 for the fight doesn't go to decision is barely parlayable. Yeah, but I'm going to pick Joe Bodybagz Pyfer here by second round knockout. But I am really looking forward to this fight. A really high level prospect here in Pyfer with a very bright future. He's marketable. Obviously, the brass likes him. He's got power and he's got some wrestling and grappling too. And he's going to be going up against a guy in Meerschaert, 17 UFC fights, 10 wins at the UFC level, 100% finish rate in those 10 wins. So Pyfer is going to, really have to avoid making the mistakes here. But if he does that, he should be throwing more. He should be landing the more impressive shots on the feet. And, it looks like his grappling game should be good enough to keep this fight standing because Gerald, 20 takedowns in 17 fights is not particularly great. It's 2.17 per 15 minutes. That's good. And we're going to see Joe's takedown defense really kind of tested here for the first time at the UFC level. So very interesting fight, but I'm picking Joe Pyfer, Bodybagz, to win this one by second round knockout. So Bodybagz knockout round number 2. All right. The next fight, Michelle Waterson-Gomez, going to be squaring off against Luana Pinheiro. We got Waterson at plus 142. We got Pinheiro at minus 162. Fight doesn't go to decision, up at plus 200 here. Let me see something here real quick. My guy, Mr. D, saying Chase Sherman, future champ. It's coming, you guys. It's coming. And Victor De Jesus will be right there with me, max betting Sherman on that title fight when it does happen, man. Sherman will make a good stage. I think he would. Over under 1.5 on this one, leaning over, but just barely. Yeah, man. If I bring up the prop template here, available on Uncle Weezy's Patreon, the best over under analytics that you can get. The under 1.5 at minus 135. 9 of 17 per fight for Pyfer, 1 of 1, or 9 of 17 for Meerschaert, 1 of 1 for Pyfer, 10 of 18. So 55% of their combined UFC fights have finished under 1.5 rounds. You're paying 57% on the line. Yeah, I mean, it's bettable either way. They're both priced right about where they should be. It just depends on what your read is. All right, so let's get to this next fight. We got Waterson-Gomez squaring off against Luana Pinheiro. So we'll start talking about Michelle Waterson-Gomez, the karate hottie, a veteran of the sport of MMA. She's 37 years old, and she's got an 18-10 pro record with almost 300 minutes in the pro cage. She's 6-6 in the UFC and spent 180 minutes fighting in the UFC cage. They call Michelle the karate hottie, and she definitely has a traditional martial arts style on the feet. She stands sideways. She bounces up and down on her toes, using her kicks to maintain distance. She's got a negative 0.72 distance striking differential with a 41% accuracy and a 57% defense. She's only been knocked down once in 12 UFC fights, and she's never been knocked out in the UFC. Michelle's been an active wrestler and will mix it in to win minutes. She's attempted 54 takedowns in 12 fights, and she's averaging 1.33 takedowns per 15 minutes and 0.66 submission attempts per 15 minutes. So she does like to mix up her game and use all the tools in her toolbox. Her grappling efficiency is below average, I would say, though. So it's hard to count on her to win tons of minutes in the grappling or striking exchanges. But if her opponent has a weak area, Michelle will find it and exploit it. Michelle has fought solid competition in the UFC. Her 12 opponents have a combined UFC record of 85 wins and 64 losses, and she's only losing to the best fighters, as the 6 ladies who beat Michelle have a combined UFC record of 52 wins and 24 losses. Michelle has below average UFC wins, though, I would say. Now, Luana Pinheiro is a 30-year-old Brazilian fighter. She's 5'2" with a 62-inch reach. She has a 10-1 pro record, and she's finished 7 of her 10 wins inside the distance, 5 by submission, 2 by knockout. Luana has a 3-1 career record in decisions. She's got rare power on the feet for a strawweight. She tends to wait for long periods of time, then explodes with blast combos, moving her feet with her, throwing 4 or 5 punch combinations while her opponents are moving backwards. In addition, Luana has a nasty clinch game because she is a judo black belt. She lands knees and elbows, but way more often she chooses to go for throws in the clinch, and she gets them easily and drops her opponents on their heads, and that's how Luana gets her takedowns. And then once the fight is on the ground, she uses her BJJ to hunt for subs, and she's got 5 career wins by submission. Luana is definitely dangerous everywhere and does a great job of finding finishes, but at the UFC level, she counts on winning moments in order to bank rounds. Her conditioning leaves a lot to be desired. Because she's so explosive with her striking, judo throws, and submission attempts, she slows down in the second round and can easily give away minutes with her inactivity later on in fights. Luana is still putting it all together, and when she does a better job of pacing herself and working on her conditioning, she's going to be a problem in this division. Michelle is the more experienced fighter with 17 more professional fights. She's got 225 more minutes in the pro cage and almost 10 more years as a pro fighter in comparison to Luana. She also has the UFC experience edge with 10 more fights and 160 more minutes in the UFC cage. Waterson will be the superior technical striker, distance manager, and minute winner at distance striking range, and her open mat wrestling will be better than Luana's. Michelle's fought, beaten, and lost to the better win-loss record and more experienced competition. Luana Pinheiro is 7 years younger than Michelle. She's never been finished as a pro. She will be more dangerous in the clinch, especially with her judo throws, if she can get into the clinch and close the distance versus Waterson. Luana will be the superior moment winner on the feet, and she will get the more eye-catching takedowns if she can find her way into the clinch. I think this is a very close fight. I think Waterson is worth a live bet after the first round, especially if the fight is close. But if the round went to Luana, because I expect Michelle to get better as the fight goes on, while I expect Luana to slow down. So I kind of feel like if Michelle can get out of that first round, not sustaining a lot of damage, keeping the fight close, that we'll see a higher likelihood of Michelle winning minutes in the second and the third rounds, as we've seen Luana slow down later on in fights. That being said, I'm going to pick Luana Pinheiro to win a close split decision by winning the moments and landing the bigger shots here. So that's the pick. It's going to be Luana Pinheiro here to win by decision. But I think that Michelle Waterson is a very live dog here. This is a big step up in competition for Luana. Michelle, I think, is going to fight smart. I think she's going to try to keep this fight at distance striking range. And I think she might be able to outpoint Luana if she's successful keeping her distance and is able to touch Luana when Luana is not able to touch her. But we will see. Luana's a lot younger, a lot more explosive, and I feel like she can lose minutes, but win. Just like, for instance, Luana against Sam Page, when they fought. Luana won that first round pretty convincingly, landed some big shots on Sam Page, but in the second round, we saw Luana slow down. We saw Sam Page start to pick up the pace and start to pressure and start to kind of drown Luana in volume a little bit. Now, Sam's winning that second round for about 4.5 minutes. And with 30 seconds left, Luana does one of those blast combos where she's just walking forward like a zombie, putting the right foot forward and throwing the left, then putting that right foot forward and putting the left foot forward, throwing the right. She lands a big shot, drops Hughes, gets on top, lands some decent ground and pound. She steals the second round. And then she goes out there and loses the third round on superior volume, superior pressure by Hughes. So I think Luana really does need to win the moments here. And I think she can win the moments and get this decision. But this is a close fight. And I don't hate anybody that's taking the dog shot here on Waterson-Gomez. All right. The next fight that we're going to talk about, Kelvin Gastelum going up against the action man, Chris Curtis. This is going to be a fun one. We haven't seen Kelvin Gastelum for about 1.5 years, so he's going to be making his return here. This is the fight-ready version of Kelvin Gastelum. He's minus 128, while Chris Curtis, the action man, is plus 108. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting up at plus 160. Very interesting fight here. So let's first talk about Kelvin Gastelum. We've seen Kelvin grow up before our eyes as UFC fans. It's hard to believe it was already 10 years ago when Kelvin won the Ultimate Fighter finale as a huge underdog against the feared Uriah Hall. Kelvin is still only 31 years old, despite the fact that he's got 20 UFC fights and over 270 minutes in the UFC cage. In that time, he's earned an 11-8 record with 1 no contest at the UFC level. Kelvin is a wrestle boxer who throws a good amount of volume. He's incredibly durable, and he's shown the ability to mix in the wrestling and win minutes there when it's to his benefit to do so. Over the huge sample size of 20 fights that Kelvin has had and 270 minutes in the UFC cage, Kelvin has got a positive 0.27 distance striking differential. He's got 9 knockdowns to his credit, 39% distance accuracy, and a little bit over 60% distance striking defense. He throws 0.84 more distance strike attempts per minute than his opponents do, and he's able to count on his chin and durability to recover quickly when he does get dropped. Kelvin has shown good grappling efficiency over his UFC career. He's got 19 takedowns, but his opponents have gotten Kelvin down 29 times. But Kelvin's still winning about 51% of the control time positions that he's been in. So about 30% of Kelvin's career has taken place in control time positions, and he's winning about half of them. But he's winning half of them while his opponents have attempted 20 more takedowns than him and gotten 10 more. So even though his takedown defense is only sitting around 63%, it's pretty clear that when Kelvin gets takedowns, he's spending a little more time controlling his opponents than when Kelvin's opponents take him down. Kelvin's showing a pretty good get-up game. So Kelvin's faced nothing but top-level competition in the UFC from day one. So he's well-tested, still only 31 years old, and he recently made the move to Fight Ready, one of the best camps in the country. And he's going to be squaring off against the action man, Chris Curtis, who will take any fight at any time, on any day, in any place. He's an ultra veteran. He's got a 39-fight pro career, almost 500 minutes in the pro cage, and almost a 14-year-long MMA career. Chris is pretty much a pure striker. He's low volume, kind of waits to counter. He stays in boxing range, and when he gets his opponent's timing and range, he usually finds a way to land a big shot that changes the trajectory of the fight. Chris has landed 3 knockdowns in his 5 UFC fights, and all 3 of those knockdowns have resulted in a knockout win for the action man. He's 4-1 thus far in the UFC, and all of his wins are against tough dudes. Phil Hawes, Brendan Allen, Rodolfo Vieira, and Joaquin Buckley. Chris likes to use his wrestling in reverse so he can keep the fight standing and at striking range. Chris has attempted 0 takedowns in his 5 UFC fights, and his opponents have attempted 32 takedowns. And Chris has shown 100% takedown defense against those 32 attempts. So not only does Chris want to keep the fight standing, but he's got the takedown defense to make that happen. Chris is an easy guy to root for. He's got a style that works. He's got the experience to know what will work best for him in each particular fight. This is going to be a banger for sure. I can't wait for this one. But in summary, Kelvin is going to be 4 years younger than Chris Curtis here. He's got the UFC, but not the overall experience advantage, with 15 more fights at the UFC level and about 220 more minutes in the UFC cage. Kelvin should be the busier striker who throws and lands more volume, but he will be the far more likely guy to go to the wrestling to try to win minutes there. Kelvin's fought the much more experienced competition at the UFC level. Chris Curtis will be 1 inch taller than Kelvin. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage over Kelvin, so that's going to serve him really well on the feet. He's got 14 more professional fights and almost 200 more minutes of pro cage time in comparison to Gastelum. It's just Gastelum has fought a much higher percentage of his career at the UFC level. Chris Curtis has finished 3 of his 4 UFC wins and definitely has the moment-winning potential and the power advantage on the feet, I would say. This is going to be a close fight. The volume and UFC experience of Gastelum versus the moment-winning and knockdown potential of Chris Curtis. I love the over 2.5 rounds in this spot at minus 220 as a parlay piece because I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum to come off his 1.5-year hiatus, look improved and refreshed. cruising his way to a unanimous decision win here. But that over 2.5 at minus 220 is a great play because Chris Curtis has 9 career losses. Kelvin Gastelum has 8. And these guys have only been finished 4 times total in those 17 losses. And 3 of them are by submission. And we really don't. Kelvin Gastelum has attempted 0.11 submissions per 15 minutes in his UFC career. And Chris Curtis doesn't attempt takedowns or submissions. And as a matter of fact, he does have actually 3 submission wins to his credit in his career, but I mean, that's out of 39 fights. And, Chris Curtis is definitely not known for his submission game. So I kind of feel like if somebody's going to finish this fight, it has to be by knockout. And both of these guys are incredibly durable. So definitely love the minus 220 over 2.5 here. I parlayed that with the Carl Williams money line to get minus 125. And I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum to come back looking refreshed and to find a way to win the minutes of this fight to win a decision against Chris, the action man, Curtis. All right, let's see. Wow, we're already an hour 25 into this. I've got a story time with Uncle Weezy kind of teed up here, but we've got to get to business here. There is just not enough time to do it this week, but we will get to it soon, you guys. I promise. Let's move on to this next fight. And it is going to be the first fight on the pay-per-view card. We've got El Nino Problema, also known as El Mariachi Loco, Raul Rosas Jr. going up against Christian Rodriguez. 2 young prospects, 2 guys with very bright futures, and 2 damn good fighters going to be squaring off against each other. And I can't wait to talk about this one. So like I said, El Nino Problema, El Mariachi Loco, as he used to be known, is an 18-year-old grappler who's taking the MMA world by storm. Fresh off a first-round submission win over Jay Perrin, Raul is 7-0 in his pro career with 6 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 5 submissions and 1 knockout. All of his finishes come on the mat where he absolutely does his best work. Raul fights with a style that suits his strengths perfectly. On the feet, he's constantly pressuring. He shoots his first takedown usually like about 10 seconds into the fight. And I think on the last time that we talked about Raul Rosas Jr., I had written down how many seconds it took him to shoot his first takedown in all of his fights. And it's like, almost all of them are coming in 4 or 5 seconds into the fight. And once he shoots that first takedown, he's going to chain together attempts until he gets the fight to the ground. And once he gets it there, he works to his opponent's back and he looks to finish. He uses ground and pound to open up his submissions, and he's clearly way ahead of his years when it comes to grappling acumen and technique. Rosas has good size and strength for the bantamweight division, and even though his striking is a work in progress, he rarely has to use it. The kid's got a very bright future in the bantamweight division for sure, but he's got a stiff test in front of him in one Christian C-Rod Rodriguez. C-Rod's only 25 years old, so he's also a very young prospect, but it's just how ridiculous, that Raul Rosas is fighting in the UFC at the age of 18 and is already 1-0 with a first-round finish. So C-Rod is young. He's getting better too. He trains mainly at Rufus Sport, but he also had a cup of coffee at Fight Ready before the Weems fight. Christian's 8-1 in his pro career, with his only loss coming on short notice up a weight class against Jonathan Pierce. Christian is a well-rounded finisher. 7 of his 8 pro wins are inside the distance, and he has 4 submissions and 3 knockouts. So he's just as dangerous on the feet with his kickboxing as he is on the ground with his submissions. Christian will have an advantage in this fight in the stand-up as long as the fight remains there. Chris has fantastic boxing. He always throws in combination. He's got good power, a straight 1-2 down the pipe, and his left hook to the body is absolutely beautiful. Unless you're the one absorbing it, in which case it sucks ass. The biggest problem for Christian in this matchup is the 38% takedown defense that he's shown thus far. Raul's a very good wrestler and control time grappler, so if he can't stop takedowns in this fight, it's going to be a really long night for him. Chris has fought the better brand of competition, though, as a professional. So this is essentially a striker versus grappler matchup. Both of these guys have fairly well-rounded games. But if Rosas gets his wrestling going, and he probably wins. And if C-Rod stops the takedowns and keeps it on the feet, he probably wins. Rosas is 7 years younger. He's 2 inches taller. Rosas has the superior wrestling in BJJ here. Christian has a 4-inch reach advantage, which could serve him well on the feet. And he has the better boxing technique and distance striking metrics. Dude's got legit power there, which would be much more evident if JSP didn't eat his best shots like a panini. There were a couple of times where C-Rod landed shots on JSP. In particular, one time, they were clinched up, and Rodriguez, when they were separating, landed an elbow to Pierce's head that I thought broke his skull. When you hear how sickening that sounded when Rodriguez landed that elbow against Pierce, I can't believe Pierce ate that elbow like it was nothing. And I think it would have dropped half of the featherweight weight class and probably 75% of the bantamweight weight class. Jonathan Pierce is a zombie. He's about as tough as it gets. And when you go back and you watch that Rodriguez fight, even though Pierce is winning the minutes with the wrestling and is getting takedowns over and over again, just keep in mind, Jonathan Pierce is gigantic. He's long. He's got incredible conditioning. And even he found himself in a couple of deep submission attempts that he almost tapped to and eating some big shots in the clinch and at distance that I think would have given a lot of other fighters some problems here. So, I've got a 1-unit bet on the C-Rod money line here. I absolutely think he's live, and I'm convinced his grappling game is better than Rosas' striking game. And if C-Rod can threaten with chokes or get a sweep or two, get back to his feet, he can make this fight very close. I'm picking Rosas to win this fight by decision, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than the line suggests. And I really do believe that people are disrespecting the overall MMA game of Christian Rodriguez. This guy is not just a striker. He's a good wrestler. He's a very good submission grappler. And the one thing I really like about Christian Rodriguez is his poise. It does not look like the moment is too big for him. Now, Rosas, he looked great against Jay Perrin in front of a live crowd. That was a great debut. But this Rodriguez guy has got so much more upside than Jay Perrin does. And I just don't think that Christian Rodriguez, that this moment's going to be too big for him. I think he's going to be poised. I think he's going to be calm. And I think when Raul does take him down, he's going to find his way back to the feet here, frustrate this guy, and make this very, very close. The official pick is Raul Rosas Jr. to win by decision. I think that the UFC is invested in this kid. I think that they are trying to showcase him. They didn't put him as the curtain jerker for the pay-per-view here to watch him lose to Christian Rodriguez. However, the fact that the UFC wants Raul Rosas Jr. to win doesn't mean dick to Christian Rodriguez. I'm damn sure that Christian Rodriguez doesn't give a fuck that the UFC wants Raul Rosas to win this fight and they want a nice showcase for him. Because I think Christian's coming in there to get what's his. And I think that he's being disrespected, and I think that this fight's going to wind up playing out a lot closer than what people say. I've got 1 unit on the Christian Rodriguez money line at plus 160. I'm riding with that. I'm confident with that, and I think that this is going to be a great fight. But I think if it does go to the scorecards, the UFC has a nice little habit of making sure that the guy that they want to win gets the decision when it does go to the scorecards. Yeah, so picking Raul Rosas Jr. to win by decision, but the bet is 1 unit on the Christian Rodriguez money line. The next fight that we've got, Kevin Holland going up against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio, a pretty big underdog here at plus 201. Holland at minus 236. Fight doesn't go to decision, up at minus 140. All right. So, start talking about Kevin Holland. He's a very experienced fighter. For someone who is only 30 years old, that is. He's got a 23-9 pro record. He's got almost 300 minutes in the pro cage. 18 finishes in those 23 wins, 11 knockouts, 7 submissions. He's a BJJ black belt under Travis Lutter. but he definitely does his best work, on the feet at distance striking range. At distance, Kelvin has got a positive 1.73 distance striking differential. He's got 4 knockdowns and a 51% accuracy. He's lacking good defense, though, as he tends to trust his iron chin. His distance striking defense is only 54%, and that leaves a lot to be desired. Kevin's takedown defense has really let him down in the past. He has 50% takedown defense on 85 attempts against. So he's definitely had a hard time losing way too many minutes on his back. He loses 73% of the control time positions he's been in, and he's allowing 3.38 takedowns per 15 minutes to his opponents. Kelvin has moved from 185 down to 170, where he will be facing smaller guys, which should make it easier to stop takedowns, and that should be helpful for him. He's faced a solid level of competition. He's got nasty power on the feet. He's extremely durable. But my God, the fight IQ leaves so much to be desired. He's still only 30, so there's still time for Kelvin to shore up the holes in his game. But my God, the thought of laying minus 236 on Kelvin Holland, who's coming off a performance where he was letting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson stand back up and get back to where he was most comfortable. It's clear that Kelvin is a very confident young man, but I mean, he fights, in my opinion, for kind of like the wrong reasons. I think it's more of an ego thing for him than it is getting the job done, going in there and acting like it's your job to get a win, to do whatever it takes to get a win. When your opponent takes you down, instead of having a conversation with DC, who's calling the fight, going, yeah, this guy does wrestle a lot. Yeah, he does have good top control. How about keeping your mouth shut and just getting back to your feet, So Kelvin Holland is a tremendous talent, everybody. I mean, to be 6'3" with an 81-inch reach as a welterweight is going to be a serious fucking problem. But God damn, does he have a long way to go shoring up his complete MMA game. Because when Kelvin Holland does shore up his MMA game, when he stops doing stupid shit, when he stops takedowns, when he gets takedowns, when his opponent's a good striker and keeps his opponents back to the mat, that cheat code size that he has, that great power that he has, that great durability that he has, those are all going to add up, to the type of skills that are going to get him a ton of wins, but he just needs to be so much smarter, and he's not there yet. And he's facing off against Santiago Ponzinibbio, 36-year-old kickboxer from Argentina, 35 professional fights, a very impressive 29-6 professional record, 76% of his pro wins coming inside the distance. He's got 16 UFC fights and an 11-5 record in the promotion, with 6 of those 11 wins coming inside the distance, all of them by knockout. Pons does nice work on the feet. He's got power. He's got nasty low leg kicks that can be very useful against a guy with neuro-ass legs like Kelvin Holland has. He's got a positive 0.53 distance striking differential, 62.5% distance striking defense, and 10 knockdowns in his 16 UFC fights. So he's got a lot of power. He's been in there with the best strikers in the division, and he's never really looked out of his depth. Just look at the last 5, you guys. Alex Morono's solid. Michel Pereira is a very difficult striker to deal with. He's huge. He's long. He's flashy. He's powerful. That was a fight that could have went either way. He's in there with Jeff Neal. Split decision. One of the best strikers in the entire division. He's going to a split decision. Very close fight with Jeff Neal. He wins a unanimous decision against Miguel Baeza. And then he got knocked out by Li Jingliang after a long absence and a long he was sick for a while. Nasty staph infections. Came back to the Li Jingliang fight. Didn't really look like himself. Got knocked out. But since that performance, he's had 4 good fights. A decisive win over Baeza. A decisive win. Well, not a decisive win over Morona, but he did knock him out. But he was having problems until he knocked him out. And then he's in there with really quality strikers like Pereira and Neal and being in razor close fights with them. So Almost 90% of his fights have taken place at distance striking range, and he's proven difficult to take down and keep down, as Pons has only been controlled for 6% of his UFC cage time. Pons has faced some really good competition over his UFC career, as the UFC record of his 16 opponents at the UFC level is 126 wins and 74 losses. So this guy Ponzinibbio is no joke, you guys. Kevin Holland is 6 years younger, 3 inches taller, and he's got an 8-inch reach advantage. Those are the things you can't teach. And Kevin Holland has got those things that you can't teach in spades. However, the shit that you can teach, Kevin Holland seems to let go in one ear and out the other. Kevin's got the better distance striking metrics, and that 8-inch reach advantage is going to make it very difficult for Santiago to close the distance and win minutes in the striking exchanges. Ponzinibbio has shown the better UFC power numbers in the stand-up, though, with 10 knockdowns in 16 fights and 6 UFC wins by knockout. He will also be the guy who's more likely to wrestle here, and he would be smart to do so, seeing he's such a massive reach disadvantage in this spot. He might as well try to wrestle to see if Kevin Holland has shored up that takedown defense, to see if he has gotten better at getting up when he does get taken down, and not just play BJJ off his back unsuccessfully. Ponzinibbio has the better UFC strength of schedule for sure, as he's fought, beaten, and lost to the better win-loss ratio and more experienced competition. I can't really count on Ponzinibbio to start wrestling at the age of 36, and closing that reach disadvantage is going to be a nightmare, especially in the big cage. So I am picking Kevin Holland to win this fight by decision, but I can't get to laying this kind of juice due to the bad takedown defense and bad fight IQ Holland has shown during his UFC tenure. So even though I'm picking Kevin Holland and I'm going to pick him to win by decision, I think that this is probably going to be close, and I think Santiago might be able to find ways to win minutes if he's successful with his wrestling, and could maybe land some low leg kicks that could really get Kevin Holland out of his rhythm and a little more defensive than he usually is at range. So very interesting fight. Picking Kevin Holland to win, but definitely not laying that juice. All right. Next fight, everyone. Rob Font going up against Adrian Yanez. Font's the underdog at plus 155. Yanez the favorite, minus 180. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting up at minus 130. So let's get these stats up on the screen, and we're going to start talking about Rob Font, who is 35 years old, 5'8" with a 71-inch reach. So we'll be the slightly bigger dude, but it's going to be Yanez, who's a lot younger here. It's over 6 years younger. So we definitely like that on the Yanez side. And Yanez is pretty experienced, even though we know that Font is a guy who has 14 UFC fights, 175 minutes in the UFC cage, which is almost how many minutes Yanez has as a professional. Yanez has 19 fights and Font has 25. So definitely, Yanez is not at a big experience disadvantage here. What he's at a disadvantage is the UFC level of experience that Font has been facing lately, facing guys like Vera, Aldo, Garbrandt, Moraes, Simon, while we see Adrian Yanez going up against Victor Rodriguez, Gustavo Lopez, Randy Costa, Davey Grant, and Tony Kelly. Both of these guys have been pretty good finishers at the UFC level. Font has finished 6 of his 9 wins. Yanez has finished 4 of his 5 wins. And neither one of these guys has ever been knocked out as a professional. Rob Font has been finished once in 25 professional fights, and it was by submission. Both of these guys have winning records in decisions. When we look at the distance striking numbers, I like Font's minute winning ability here. He throws a ton of volume, 17.2 significant strike attempts per minute, while his opponents are only throwing 11. He's got a positive significant strike differential of 3.11. So he's definitely landing a lot more shots than his opponents do per minute, and he's winning those minutes staying behind his jab. He's got a great long jab, which he hits once, and he also doubles up. That jab sets up everything else that he does. He's got sweet uppercuts, and he throws a ton of volume. and he's pretty damn accurate at about 44% as well. Now, Giannis also does fantastic work on the feet, and he's super smooth. He's really technical, and he even though he's real smooth and it doesn't look like he's trying to throw with a ton of power, man, does he have a ton of power. And that's what a lot of these boxing coaches, you hear them say, just touch. But it's the power and the precision, they come together. And Giannis just doesn't overdo it. He's so smooth, but the power just flows naturally, as he's got 5 knockdowns in 5 UFC fights. And he's got a positive 0.74 significant strike differential, and he throws about 2.4 more distant strike attempts than his opponents. But you see those numbers are just more amplified on the Font side. He should be the better minute winner here. And Font's got power of his own. Rob Font has landed 6 knockdowns in 14 fights. So Giannis has 5 in 5 fights. Font has 6 in 14. But let's not forget, Rob Font's fighting real guys. Adrian Giannis is fighting, bums. Legitimately. So big step up in competition here for Adrian Giannis. In addition to that, we've seen Rob Font mix in the grappling a little bit. He's got 12 takedowns. His opponents have 18. So he gets less takedowns than his opponents. His opponents outcontrol him at almost a 2-to-1 ratio. He's only winning 36% of the control time positions that he's been in. But nobody has tried to wrestle Adrian Giannis thus far. The UFC has been very, very careful. You could tell they want Adrian Giannis to do very well. It's mathematically impossible to get an easier strength to schedule in the bantamweight division in the UFC than what Giannis has had so far. And he's, being hyped despite the fact that he's beating the bottom 10% of the bantamweight division, while guys like Font are facing top 10 guys perennially. So they both have got some power, but I believe that Giannis's power is going to stand out just a little bit more. They throw a bunch of volume and are both very technical with their boxing, but I think that Font is going to be the better minute winner. I also think that Font's more likely to wrestle here. Adrian Giannis has never even attempted a takedown at the UFC level. Font's attempted 32 in 14 fights, so maybe we might see him try to get a takedown or two at the end of rounds, maybe close. Maybe if a round is close, we could see Font get a takedown here. We've seen Adrian Giannis lose minutes on the regional scene. The fights that he's lost in his career, and there have been 3 of them, have been a result of guys wrestling him. So the UFC brass, because they're trying to push him, have been very careful about not matching him up with anybody that would even attempt to wrestle. And they've been very successful with that so far. As his 5 UFC fights, Adrian Giannis has only seen 5 takedown attempts against. So I don't really think we can count on Font to go out there and wrestle this guy, but he's definitely got minute-winning potential in this fight. On the feet, in the grappling exchanges, and when you look at the strength of schedule of these two guys, it's completely different. A 1.56 ratio wins to losses for Font's competition. 114 and 73 are the combined records of his opponents, while Adrian Giannis' opponents are 11 and 15. With a 0.73 win-loss ratio and 5.2 total fights. So, yeah, the things you like about Giannis are the moment winning, the power, the youth, and the fact that the UFC is clearly trying to set this guy up for success. So if it's a close fight, I think Giannis is going to get the nod no matter what. I was really taking a long look at Rob Font by decision at plus 275. But I really do think that this fight does go to decision. Like I said, neither one of these guys has ever been knocked out, and that's in 44 professional fights. And neither one of these guys is a threat for submissions. So I really do believe that if this fight is going to go the distance. These guys are both very durable. Yes, we've seen Rob Font be knocked down 5 times in his last 2 fights, but keep in mind that those were 25-minute fights, so a total of 50 minutes. And he absorbed well over 100 significant strikes in those 2 fights. So it's not like he's being knocked down on 10% of the significant strikes that he's absorbing. It's more like 2% in those last 2 fights. And once again, it's against Marlon Vera and Jose Aldo. the former featherweight champion of the world and one of the knockdown kings of the bantamweight division. So, I'm picking Rob Font to win this fight by decision. I think he'll win the fight. And because of that, I'm just going to say he's going to win it. But I think that what happens if this is close, I think Adrian Yanez is going to get the judge's nod, because everything that the UFC is telling me about how they're setting this guy up and how they're getting him up that ladder, it looks awfully similar to what they did with Alex Pereira by not giving him any wrestlers or anybody that would wrestle at all. And they're doing the same thing with Yanez. They're just not letting anybody get in the cage with him that has any kind of a wrestling background so that he can do what he does best, which is distance striking. So picking Rob Font to win by decision, but my official prediction is that if Rob Font does win the minutes of this fight and should have gotten the decision, that Adrian Yanez will get the nod, because I believe that the UFC is corrupt and they want him to win. So Font by decision, the official pick. Next fight is going to be Jorge Masvidal plus 350 going up against Gilbert Burns minus 450. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 155. This card taking place in Miami, Florida. Both of these guys training in Miami, Florida. And I think that they're going to be looking for bragging rights to see which one of these guys is representing their camp the best. Jorge Masvidal at ATT, Gilbert Burns at Kill Cliff FC. It's going to be Masvidal, who's the bigger dude here. He's going to be an inch taller. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. But it's going to be Gilbert Burns, who's about a year and a half younger. Both of these guys are very experienced, but obviously Jorge Masvidal, almost 600 minutes in the professional cage. I mean, come on. 10 hours of this guy's life he's spent in a steel cage fighting for his life in his underwear. And then you got Gilbert Burns, who's 21-5, an 11-year career, 26 fights, and 19 fights at the UFC level, and a 14-5 record. So clearly the way better record belongs to Gilbert Burns. At the UFC level, both of these guys are finishing more than 50% of their fights. And at the UFC level, neither one of these guys is getting finished, really. Well, we do have Burns has been knocked out twice, but Masvidal has only been finished once in 9 losses. So he's very durable. And it was by knockout, not by submission. So it's been a very long time since Jorge Masvidal has been submitted by anyone. When we look at the distance striking numbers here, it's going to be Masvidal who has the better metrics. He's got a positive 0.66 distance striking differential. He throws about the same amount of volume as his opponents, landing a knockdown on over 1% of the distance strikes that he attempts. So I think that what we've got is 10 knockdowns in 21 fights for Masvidal. And for Gilbert Burns, we've got 4 knockdowns in 19 fights. Both of these guys spend about 60% of their UFC cage time at distance striking range. And when it gets to grappling positions, that's where Burns does his best work. And that's really where Jorge Masvidal wants to avoid. Because Masvidal is showing 71% takedown defense. He's been taken down 33 times in 21 fights, allowing 1.78 takedowns per 15 minutes. And he's getting out-controlled 25% to 15.5%. So he's only winning about 38% of the control time positions that he's in, and he's spending over 40% of his fights there. Now, on the other side, Burns is out-controlling his opponents at about a 2.2 to 1 ratio. He's winning about 69% of the control time positions that he's in. And, I think that he's going to be much more likely to go to the wrestling here and try to win minutes on the ground. And that's probably what he does here, because Jorge is obviously at his best at distance striking range. He's really smooth there. He's got good technical boxing. He's durable. He's got some power, and he's confident there. He's been in there with some really good boxers and looked really good against them. Now, Burns does have some power, especially early in fights, but yeah, he's absorbing more strikes than he lands at distance. His opponents throw more volume than him. He's absorbing more knockdowns than he gets. So I really kind of see this as, if this fight stays on the feet, it's going to be Masvidal. And if Gilbert Burns kind of pushes the same kind of game plan he did against Stephen Thompson and Neil Magny, where he just tried to get the fight to the ground and work his submission game, then he should easily win this one. I think Jorge's being kind of disrespected here at plus 375. I mean, it's not like Gilbert Burns is going out there and just dominating dudes with his wrestling. And Jorge Masvidal's last 3 fights were against Colby Covington and 2 fights against Kamaru Usman. And then 2 fights before that, he was fighting Ben Askren. So it's not like this guy hasn't trained for wrestlers. It's not like this guy hasn't been drilling his takedown defense over and over again. So what happens if Gilbert Burns can't get this fight to the ground? Jorge Masvidal is going to look a lot better than plus 375. I can assure you of that. So I think that this fight's going to play out closer than what the line says, but I also believe that the path to victory is very clear to Gilbert Burns. Don't let Jorge strike. Go out there and grapple with this dude. Wait for him to make a mistake and then get on his back and then work for that submission. And even if you don't get it, you can just ride out the rest of the round with a body triangle, landing a little bit of ground and pound and winning the minutes. And Gilbert's attempted 82 takedowns in 19 fights. So that's more than 4 takedown attempts per fight. That's solid. More than 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. That's solid. And that's about how many Jorge Masvidal allows. So if Burns can get takedowns in 2 out of these 3 rounds, I think that this fight is going to be his. But if he doesn't, boy, holding a minus 500 Gilbert Burns ticket is going to be absolutely terrifying. And don't forget, it's not like Gilbert's young. Dude, he's going on 37 here in a couple of months. So, yeah, this is going to be a big stay away from me. I think Masvidal, there's a very good chance that he's completely checked out and we never see him fight, at the UFC level like he has in the past. So I think he could be done. And it does look like Gilbert Burns is a little more invested in fighting these days than Masvidal is. But yeah, the pick is going to be Gilbert Burns, and I think he's going to win this one by decision. But yeah, I'm not laying that juice, and I don't think you should either. So let's do that one here. Gilbert Burns by decision. But if he can get a submission over Jorge Masvidal, that would be quite a feather in his cap, because Jorge does have really good takedown defense and really good submission defense. So, yeah, I think this one does go the distance. And I also kind of like the over 2.5 and the fight goes to decision here. I'll show you what the prop template is saying about that. The fight goes at plus 125 is a 44% implied probability, but 50% of 3-round fights in the welterweight division actually see the scorecard. So that's a 5.63% break there when we compare the implied probability of the line to the benchmark for the division. And we also see 18 of their 32 fights, or 56.25%, have went the distance. So that is 11.8% better than the 44% implied probability of the line. And these guys go to decision at a higher rate than what the division does overall, by about 6.18%. So when we add those 3 numbers up, we get about 23% in savings with where this line is priced, and it's underpriced based on all 3 metrics that we compare here on the prop template. So I definitely like fight goes to decision or over 2.5 at plus 107. Those are definitely bets that the prop template approves here, you guys. And that brings us to our main event. If you guys haven't already, there's 75 of you in here. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please consider joining the Patreon to support my work. And let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC 287 and finish talking about this main event, the rematch. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. Pereira plus 115, Adesanya minus 135. Fight doesn't go to decision, up to minus 155 now. So I don't even really want to look at stats here, because we really don't have stats on Alex Pereira. He's only got 4 fights at the UFC level. And this is a kickboxing match, okay? We got a pure kickboxer in Alex Pereira, and we've got a pure kickboxer in Israel Adesanya. And Israel Adesanya has cleaned out the middleweight division. He showed everybody in this division that, yes, you might be the better grappler than me, but you're not going to be able to get me down and hold me down long enough in order for you to overcome the deficit that's going to be there while this fight is on the feet. And so they found a guy in Pereira who had beaten Adesanya twice in kickboxing. They realized that Adesanya had cleaned out the division. And then Pereira got into the UFC. And then what the UFC said was, here's what we're going to do, Alex. We're going to give you three guys who we promise won't be able to beat you, because one of them has 2 minutes of conditioning, and the other two couldn't get a takedown if their life depended on it. And he beat Andreas Mihalidis, lost the first round to Andreas because Andreas actually wrestled. He beat Bruno Silva by unanimous decision, and then he beat Sean Strickland, who was beyond stupid, by choosing to stand in front of a guy that he had a massive grappling advantage over. So he got the title shot against Israel Adesanya, a guy in Israel Adesanya who had attempted 3 takedowns in the UFC in 13 fights. A pure striker, a guy who just uses his wrestling in reverse to keep fights standing where he's better. But now here's the problem. Israel Adesanya has been such a dominant kickboxer at the UFC level and has toned that takedown defense to such a great level that he's basically equipped to beat anybody in the division besides Alex Pereira. And Alex Pereira is basically only he's only able to beat the guys that he's beaten, because half of this division takes him down and murders him on the mat. I mean, Israel Adesanya can't grapple at all. He got 1 takedown with 3.5 minutes left in the ground in the round, and Pereira was completely unable to get up and lost the rest of the round there. And it was actually Pereira who kind of initiated the clinch position that wound up allowing, Adesanya to get that takedown. It's a fascinating fight because nobody in the division can beat Adesanya. Everybody in the division can beat Pereira. But the way that these two match up, it's such a bad matchup for Israel Adesanya, because everything that Israel does well, Alex does just a little bit better, right? Adesanya is the better minute winner in the kickboxing exchanges, but damn, Pereira just hits so hard, and he's got such good low leg kicks that he can kind of slow down the mobility of Adesanya as the fight goes on by being able to play that distance striking game with Adesanya. That's something that nobody else has really been able to do, because you can't maintain range against Alex Pereira. They're both listed at 6'4", but that's complete horseshit. Look at these guys standing next to each other. Pereira is much bigger than Israel Adesanya. He's taller than Israel Adesanya. He's listed as having a 79-inch reach, and Adesanya's got an 80-inch reach. But, I mean, Pereira is just towering over this dude. So it's just so funny, because if Adesanya could wrestle even a lick, he'd probably be minus 300 here. But he can't. He can't wrestle at all. He sucks. And because of that, he's not equipped to do what 80% of the division probably does to Alex Pereira, which is, look, this guy cuts so much weight to make 185. If you just wrestle for the entire fight, he's going to break 2 minutes into round 2. But he hasn't faced anybody that's even been able to put that kind of game plan together. And even with 1 takedown that Israel Adesanya got in the last fight, the only one of his entire UFC career, spanning 14 fights and almost 260 minutes in the cage, he wound up getting 3.5 minutes of control time and clearly winning a round. But he can't do it. He's not going to be able to out-wrestle this dude, because even if Israel chooses now to start working on his wrestling, Pereira's working on his takedown defense, and Israel's just not going to have it. So Pereira's taller. He's longer. He's way more powerful. And with that pressure that he brings, I think that it's just a matter of time before that left hook finds the mark and he gets Israel Adesanya out of there. It's a fascinating fight. But I've got to pick Alex Pereira. I really think, he's the only guy that can beat Israel Adesanya. And I think he's probably going to do it again. Now, Adesanya had the first fight, and Goddard stepped in way too early. I mean, Adesanya was still moving his head. He was still lucid. He might have gotten knocked out 10 seconds later. It doesn't change the fact that it was a dog shit stoppage by a dog shit ref. But here we are again. If Pereira just finds the ability to pressure just a little bit more, come out in the first round with a little bit more urgency than he showed, I think he's going to get this guy out of there. I think he's going to knock him out. So I'm picking Alex Pereira to win this fight by third round knockout. And we did it. We did it, you guys. 2 hours and 4 minutes in. We've broken down 13 fights. We've dedicated this show to my girlfriend's late mother, Lisa. We had to pass over a story time with Uncle Weezy simply because there's so much work to do here, so much to do. So let's get right into it. UFC 287 tracked bets so far. I've got my Bet MMA tips page up here where you can check all of my tracked bets. They are all for free on this site. And we've got the Christian Rodriguez money line at plus 160 for a 1-unit bet. Also, I have a 2-leg parlay. That is the Karl Williams money line at minus 410 over future champion Chase Sherman. I'm not picking Williams to win this fight because I think he's the better fighter. I just know he's going to cheat. Just like all the other 10 guys who have beaten Chase Sherman at the UFC level have cheated. I'm very confident that Williams will cheat. The UFC will look the other way like they have everybody else that's faultily beaten Chase Sherman, and Williams will get his hand raised. And I'm going to parlay that with the over 2.5 rounds in the Gastelum Curtis fight, counting on both of those guys' durability to get minus 124 for 1.25 units. And then I've also got the under 1.5 rounds in the Williams-Sherman fight. Big plus money number at plus 205. When Chase Sherman has been taken down in round one, he's been finished in round one both times. Once by Alexander Romanov and once by Fat Collier. And I really believe that with Chase's not good takedown defense and his really pitiful get-up game and ground game, that once Williams does get a takedown and get to a dominant position, I think he's going to ground and pound him out, and it's going to be early. So I'm looking to hit a big plus money number there, plus 205 for the under 1.5 rounds for Chase Sherman versus Karl Williams. And that brings us to the final order of business of the night, Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. We broke a 7-week stretch by picking Chidi Njokuani to shave the ass of Albert Duraev, and that one just hurt. Chidi just didn't show up, and Duraev didn't either, but that didn't seem to bother Chidi. He seemed pretty much hell-bent on doing absolutely nothing for 15 minutes and gifting Albert Duraev a win, and he did that. So broke the streak here, and I'm going to break one of my own rules because there are some spots here. I mean, like a lot of people like Burns, but he's minus 500. A lot of people like Karl Williams, but he's minus 400. There's a lot of juiced favorites on this card. And then there's some guys like Bodybagz Pyfer who I just kind of feel like I need to see him beat Gerald Meerschaert before I really believe that this guy is for real. So this week's Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week is going to have me breaking one of my own rules. And it is going to be the debuting fighter, Jacqueline Amorim, who we don't know much about, but we do know that she is a second-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We do know that Sam Hughes has less than 50% takedown defense. We do know that Jacqueline is a multi-time world champion at the purple belt level, brown belt level. She has got a whole bunch of submissions in her toolbox, and she also trains with the Brazilian wrestling team as well. So I kind of feel like, the jiu-jitsu is a great thing to have, but if you can't get the fight to the ground, it really doesn't mean much. But we've seen Jacqueline look good on the wrestling entries that she's had on the regional scene. And when you get those good wrestling entries, it makes it easier to get to a dominant position. Once you take your opponent down, once you're in that dominant position, you're going to find 4 or 5 different ways to submit your opponent. And those really top level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players are usually 3 or 4 moves ahead than their opponents. I think she's going to go out there, get the job done by first round submission. I don't pick women for the ass shaving of the week almost ever because they drop the ball so much as giant favorites. But I really think that this girl is special. If it gets out of the first round, I'm going to be very nervous. But I really do think that Jacqueline gets the job done here in the very first round, shaves the ass of Sam Hughes, who's had her best performances against girls, to be fair, that couldn't grapple a lick. And that is not going to happen in this fight. Jacqueline Amorim is the far better grappler in this spot, and I think that she makes it look easy. We did it, you guys. 2 hours and 9 minutes. We still got almost 70 of you in here. We got Hasnain Kane saying Jacques Tits, legendary geometric mathematician. You've got that right. DFS by the numbers. My guy Jacqueline, my guy has done a lot of research on Jacqueline Amorim's Instagram. He sent me a picture the other day. It made me a believer as well, you guys. Let's get it. Yeah, Mr. D saying WMMA ass shaving of the week. Weezy breaking the mold. Sometimes you gotta follow your heart, you guys. And my heart is telling me to follow Jacqueline Amorim and watch her career very, very closely because I think that there's a lot of upside there. Fender Jazz saying, thanks, Weezy. Sorry for your loss. I appreciate you, man. We got DFS by the numbers saying way too much research. I feel you, man. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out here on another Tuesday night edition of Just the Tip with your Uncle Weezy. Look for me tomorrow on Pub Sports Radio, 6 o'clock Central Time for the DFS show with DFS by the numbers, Monk and Gordo Gambles. And then look for me right here at 10 o'clock Central Time tomorrow night for a version of Ask Weezy, where I'm going to start to talk about the next iteration of templates that I'm trying to create, which is going to be the Prize Picks underdog template. I've amassed a whole bunch of analytics, and I can use those analytics to create another product that can help us stack cash tickets like flapjacks, not just betting against the bookies, but betting against some of these totals that are posted on Prize Picks and Underdog. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. We'll talk about that tomorrow night on Ask Weezy. You guys have a great night. Let's all stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC 287. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and that subscribe button on your way out. Don't forget to join the Patreon. And God bless each and every one of you guys for hanging out. I will see you guys tomorrow. Be well.